Welcome to the Talking Free podcast. As the girl who has always been told she talks too much, can speak with a mouthful of marbles underwater, and can sell ice to Eskimos, I have found the perfect platform to have my say, freely. I am here to share with real people, having raw conversations about authentic stories. It is a place where you can feel safe discussing anything and everything. These stories will make you laugh, cry, debate, wonder, intrigue, and get curious about life as you talk free with Trudy Marie. Please note that the following podcast may contain discussions or topics that could be triggering or distressing for some listeners. I aim to provide informative and supportive content, but understand that certain themes may evoke strong emotions or memories. If you find yourself feeling overwhelmed or in need of support while listening, I encourage you to pause the podcast and take a break. Remember that it is okay to prioritise your well-being and seek assistance from trained professionals. There is no shame in this. In fact, it is the first brave step to healing. If you require immediate support, please consider reaching out to Lifeline on 13 11 14 or a crisis intervention service in your area. Thank you for listening, and please take care of yourself as you engage with the content of this podcast. Welcome to episode 3. When I started recording this podcast, stating I would talk about anything and everything, I didn't realise the universe would literally test my integrity so early. But here we are, and I'm about to express my opinions on a hot topic that is currently being debated on social media. Now, at the end of the day, this is not about me convincing you to think one way or the other. That is for you to decide. I am merely throwing my 2 bobs worth in the ring, providing an alternative point of view to consider based on my own personal experiences. I am not going to talk about the incident that may or may not have led to this debate for the following reasons. 1, it is in the past and cannot be changed. 2, it definitely does not need to be rehashed by me. The media have done their job already. And 3, I get to choose what I talk about around here, and that is not a subject I wish to discuss any further. So that being said, let's talk about the petition for the carrying of pepper spray in Australia. My response? Definitely not. The current situation in Australia is that it is illegal to carry or possess pepper spray in every state except Western Australia, and I will discuss the law around this. But first, let's look at what pepper spray actually is. Now, some people may say mace, and that is a brand name from the 1960s that people are familiar with. It actually contains different active ingredients. Pepper spray, or oleoresin capsicum spray, and I'll refer to it as OC spray from here, is the generic term for the natural occurring peppers within the capsicum family, with the active ingredient being capsaicin, and it is sprayed as an aerosol. It can cause burning and stinging sensations to the skin and mucous membranes, redness, involuntary closing of the eyes, and immediate but mostly temporary inflammatory respiratory symptoms, including coughing, gagging, shortness of breath, and an inability to speak. It can also cause nausea, vomiting, disorientation, and short-term loss of motor skills. So in summary, it's not very nice stuff. Now in WA, OC spray is considered to be a controlled weapon. Under the West Australian Weapons Act of 1999, Section 7, Part 1, says a person who without lawful excuse carries or possesses a controlled weapon commits an offence with a maximum penalty of 2 years prison or fines of up to $24,000. Section 7, Part 2 says a person who has lawful excuse to carry or possess a controlled weapon commits an offence if the person carries or possesses it in a manner that could reasonably be expected to cause someone A. to be injured or disabled, B. to fear that someone will be injured or disabled, and it carries the same penalty. Section 7, Part 3 states a lawful excuse to carry or possess a controlled weapon does not include the excuse that the weapon is carried or possessed for defence. Section 10 states exceptions, and it's mainly limited to police officers, public transport security officers under the Public Transport Authority Act of 2003, and museum staff under the Museum Act of 1969. OC spray is a controlled weapon prescribed under the Weapons Regulations of 1999, set out in Schedule 2, Item 17, and is described as a spray weapon made or modified to be used to discharge oleoresin capsicum. Section 7, Part 2 of the regulations further states that the Act does not apply to a spray weapon if it is carried or possessed by a person for the purpose of being used in lawful defence in circumstances that the person has reasonable grounds to apprehend may arise. Therefore, while not illegal to carry OC spray in WA, it is mainly restricted to police officers and transit guards. You need a lawful excuse to carry or possess. It may be used in circumstances to apprehend, and self-defence is not a lawful excuse to carry. Police and law enforcement officers have been carrying OC spray as an accoutrement since the 1970s, and WA police in particular since the 1990s. There is considerable training whilst police officers are at the academy on how to use OC spray, and there is annual retraining as part of critical skills. WA police regulations also stipulate that police vehicles are required to carry an OC spray first aid kit, which is not limited to, but includes a salbutamol inhaler, which is basically an asthma puffer, a spacer used to correctly administer the salbutamol, and a bottle of water for clearing eyes. First aid must be rendered to every person who is sprayed with OC spray. There are also restrictions for police officers on when and where OC spray should not be used, especially in circumstances where innocent bystanders may be affected as it is an airborne substance. There are also strict reporting protocols when OC spray has been discharged, and a comprehensive use of force report must be completed by police officers. It is a weapon after all. With all this considered, the current petition calling for all females in Australia being able to carry or possess an OC spray has me respond, absolutely not. Firstly, let's not get into the sexual discrimination issues this raises about everyone's rights to feel safe, along with the current political pronoun debate on who constitutes being a female. I am not going to discuss that topic here. What I will say, however, is fighting violence with violence is not how I want any member of the community to be responding. OC spray is a controlled weapon, and I personally don't want any member of the public to be armed with any type of weapon. Secondly, there are so many safety issues surrounding the use of OC spray. That is why it is illegal or considered to be a controlled weapon in the first place. The symptoms of being sprayed with OC spray are severe enough to require training, not just in the situations of use and circumstances of use, but also in the first aid of those affected. I know I don't want just anyone having access to this and potentially using it in a way that causes further harm, not just to the perpetrators, but also potential victims and innocent bystanders that may include babies and small children, the elderly, and the immune compromised. As a former police officer, I've had to administer first aid to people who have been sprayed. I've seen the discomfort and hose down people's faces as they struggle to see and breathe. I've also had first aid administered to myself when I got caught in the crossfire on a job, causing me to have a severe asthma attack. This puts officers' safety at risk, and the last thing they want is to be blinded or short of breath, making them more vulnerable from being disarmed from their other accoutrements. When we consider domestic and family violence situations, we do not want OC spray to fall into the hands of perpetrators, whether they are male or female. The victim could be overpowered and rendered completely incapacitated, causing them to be placed in a more vulnerable or dangerous situation, especially when children are involved. I honestly don't know what the answer is. I just know that arming the population with OC spray is not the right answer. On the 17th of October 2022, the Australian government released a 10-year national plan to end violence against women and children. The framework covers 4 domains of prevention, early intervention, response, and recovery and healing. Perhaps part of this plan could be to introduce free self-defense and situational awareness classes, starting at school. Empty or open-handed tactics can be taught to anyone of any age or any skill level, and when done correctly can allow potential victims to remove themselves from situations or at least put distance between them and their perpetrator. Everyone needs to become more situationally aware of their own surroundings, remove their phones away from their faces and earphones from their ears, to assess the environment they're in, gather relevant information, make informed decisions, perceive potential threats, and be able to respond effectively. This is for anywhere you go, at any time of the day or night. You are responsible for your own personal safety and what you can control. This means staying alert and being aware of your surroundings, including other people, giving the impression that you are calm, confident, and know where you're going, and being able to trust your instincts and those gut feelings. I tuned into personal safety when I became a mother, and even more so as a single mum. As a police officer, I became more situationally aware, and once I had PTS, I became hypervigilant. Believe me, you don't want to operate from hypervigilance and a state of fear, but having good awareness for personal safety is definitely a smart choice and skill. Whether this is paying attention at parks on your local walk or run, thinking about where you park your car when you go to work or your local shopping centre, where the nearest exits are at restaurants and cafes, checking your mirrors and windows while driving, including locking your doors, and knowing the people in your group, especially if there are new people, and what other people are nearby. Perpetrators will tend to target the vulnerable and weak as they can be easily overpowered, and you do not want to become that target. I understand that events can cause emotions to be heightened, but at this stage, it is not the time or place to make decisions or calls for actions where all the consequences have not been thoroughly considered. There is not going to be an overnight change to keep our loved ones safe until we all play a part in being educated, addressing and altering current attitudes and systems, and then taking aligned action to eliminate or reduce the risks. It starts with love and kindness towards each other. And I will finish with the words of Martin Luther King. Hate begets hate. Violence begets violence. Toughness begets a greater toughness. We must meet the forces of hate with the power of love.
Thank you for tuning in to the Talking Free podcast today. If you have an idea for a future episode or a story you'd like to share, then please message me, as I am always up for real, raw, and authentic conversations. If you love what you are hearing, then please be sure to subscribe to hear all the latest episodes and spread the word to your family, friends, and colleagues so they too can listen in. If you are sharing on social media, then please be sure to tag me at _Trudy_Marie_ so I can personally acknowledge you. I am always open to comment about how these episodes have resonated with you. It would also mean the world to me if you were to leave a 5-star review to ensure the Talking Free podcast is heard by more listeners around the world. And remember, lead with love as you live this one wild and precious life.